All right, I don't really want to watch this, but somebody that I follow tweeted some stuff about this meeting. So I'm going to subject myself to more of this torture.
Not just enough to put a pass in the hands of an individual. We want to make them active writers on our system so that they are actually utilizing that benefit. We'll improve our overall marketing efforts to attract writers back to TriMet, looking at the nature of our marketing. And one of the other pieces to building ridership really is dependent.
I'm sorry, I'm eating. Marketing is not how you get riders. Safe, frequent, reliable transit. Run more buses and trains. That's how you get riders. Not marketing, scam.
Dependent upon our employers in our footprint. If they continue with a remote work policy and employees remain at home working from their homes, it's going to be tougher to get folks back out on our system. However, of recently, more employers are asking and requiring their employees to come back a number of days in the week to in-person at the work location. This will have a significant impact on our ridership as well. And as employees look at it, if it's just one day a week, they might be willing to justify, oh, I'll just drive once a week because it's only once a week. So once you get to about that 3 days a week, then the thinking is like, okay, now it's 3 days a week. So now that will help get more employees back onto our system. So some of our building ridership, we're watching.
Not until you get your system working properly, it won't. The current system is in shambles.
Those employer policy decisions very closely.
When I stop seeing those bus is late, train is late due to operator shortage, we'll know that there may be a chance that you can get your ridership back.
Advance. So for board proposals, we've heard from you. Sam had one-on-one meetings with each of you. We took the information that we received from you, and we have 3 fair proposals for your discussion today. The first one would be to implement a fare increase in September of 2023 of 20 cents to the adult fare and the Lyft single ride. That would increase the honored citizen and youth fare by 10%, because by policy, the honored citizen and youth is 50% of the adult fare. Our second proposal is to look at January 2024 for an increase of 30 cents to the adult fare Lyft single ride and a 15 cent to the honored citizen and youth fare. And the final consideration is for September of 2024 for a 40 cent increased adult fare Lyft single ride and a 20 cent increased honored citizen youth fare. Advance. When you look at that, just to recap, and just looking at a 1-year increase, if you were to increase it by 20 cents, and as I mentioned earlier, there's always a deflection rate. Whenever you increase your fares, you're going to see a drop of approximately 1%. So we anticipate that if we raise fares by 20 cents, we're going to receive an additional 3.2 to 4.1 million, just depending on what's happening in our region, how quickly employees get back to in-person work. At 30 cents, it would be 5.1 million, and 40 cents, 6.9. Advance. This is just a repeat of the slide that I showed you previously, just as a reminder on the long-term impact of the financial impacts of a fare increase. So looking over the 10-year impact, if we do nothing, we're looking at a deficit of over $307 million. If we raise the fares by 20 cents every other year, we'd be looking at $113.2 million in 10 years. A 30-cent increase every other year, we would be looking at a 16 million shortfall, and a 40-cent increase every other year makes us whole out to about 12 years. Advance.
And these projections are rarely accurate. I hope people know that. I've been watching these things for years. This is how they present the information, but it's really accurate, rarely accurate.
When we look at the pros and cons of a fare increase, when we look at September of 2023, some of the positive things is that the sooner we implement the fare change, the sooner we collect that additional revenue, and it establishes a return to raising fares after having taken a decade off. Now, we have some challenges with that. Our first challenge is our HOP system. So as you know, this will be the first time that we will be going in and changing fares in our HOP system. So we have some reprogramming to do, along with some communications with our partners, meaning CTRAN and Streetcar. This affects our fare revenue sharing and the caps that we put in place. While we will do a Title VI analysis, we just have a shortened timeline to complete it and a shortened timeline for public engagement, but both public engagement.
A shortened time of public engagement, folks. Not that that matters, because it makes no difference to what they're going to do.
And the Title VI analysis would occur. A September 2023 increase would impact primarily essential riders and transit-dependent riders who are predominantly riding. But as mentioned previously, one of our mitigating factors is to utilize more STIF funding to offset that impact.
Yeah, sure.
Advance. So looking at January 2024 increase, and whether we're talking about January of 24 or September of 24, the pros and cons are really the same. So I'll address them at the same time. So on the positive, it allows more time to socialize the fare increase and more time to negotiate our HOP system changes. It also allows for more time to look at the burden of that fare increase on those individuals who are essential riders and transit-dependent riders. On the negative, the further that time passes passes before we do a fare increase, that's lost revenue.
See, they look at you as sources of, this is called neoliberalism, okay? This is a very good example of it. You're nothing but money to the ruling elites. The ruling elites function by these technocracies. This woman's a technocrat, and Sam's, all these people are the technocracy, which puts into place the oligarchs' rules. And in a neoliberal society, they want your money, and it goes to the elites. Where do you think this money goes? They're trying to make it sound like it goes to the riders. It doesn't. Okay, but the presentation itself is obviously, they're talking about how can we extract more money from the riders. This whole presentation is that. It's not talking about what the riders need. It's talking about how do we get more money out of them. And they're trying to put forth this argument that somehow it's necessary. Well, you just saw. Well, the most we can make out of that is $8 million. It's like nothing. That's a bogus argument, and it's clearly bogus.
And the period of time since the last fare makes it appear that TriMet can just continue to go without a fare year over year over year. So those pros and cons are true whether we look at January of 2024 or September of 2024. Advance. And advance. The positive that comes out of a fare increase is that it aligns with our business plan, our strategic financial plan, and the financial forecast. It brings in additional funding that we need for our system as a whole, and that also includes looking at our state of good repair projects, maintaining our system, keeping it running, keeping it safe and reliable, helps us keep pace with the increasing costs of fuel, wages, and overall business costs. In addition, the FTA encourages regular increases to demonstrate prudent financial management. Advance?
That's right. That's what I've been saying. This is all coming from above them. Okay, this isn't even coming from TriMet. They're implementing orders from above. That's what technocrats do. How do you think the trains got to Auschwitz? You think Hitler did it? No, the technocracy made sure it happened.
One of the big impacts.
Here we go. There it is, the AAA bond rating, which is just obscene that the banks are involved with any of this. Sickening, man. And here it says right here, see, federal code. So they just sat on that money, and me and Jason went through this, and there's $800 million sitting in their bank there right now. 800 million sitting there.
Of TriMet's revenue sources is in our ability to issue bonds. And as you know, TriMet currently maintains a AAA bond rating. Those bond rating agencies look very closely at our farebox revenue. I have had 2 meetings in the last month with
there you go. It's explained right there. It's the banks that demand extraction from the people, or you're not going to get our loan. All of this traces back to the central bankers. All what's happening to all of us right now, it all traces back to the international banking cartel, which is running the show. They control the money, and then they do it in every country, and this is what controls the world. And they have this whole bunch of technocrats who they don't get rich like an oligarch, but they make very nice livings. I mean, imagine being Sam. You're making $365,000 a year. All you got to do is smile for the cameras. And you'll have a nice fat retirement, just like they all do. Meanwhile, the serfs will suffer. And that's how neoliberalism works.
Our rating agencies, and one of the elements that they are looking at very closely now, so you can say that we're on watch for this one element, is the level of our farebox recovery, because it hasn't been increased.
Well, that really explains it all, doesn't it? The fucking banks want you to extract more money.
But it's been decreasing. So now they're looking at how stable is this particular revenue.
This is a goddamn crime that TriMet answers to the banks. I'm not surprised. I know it's a criminal organization. It's interesting to see it in a presentation where they come right out and say it. The central banks demand we get more money out of the people. That means they want that money to go to them.
Source, which is one of our key revenue sources. It's one of our top 3 revenue sources for maintaining our system. So we are on watch for our passenger revenues. Our ability to issue bonds is important for our continued operations, especially as we look at.
Bonds should have never been part of the public transportation industrial complex. And it should have never been introduced. But that's part of the scam of our lifestyle here in this country. As I just said, every aspect of our life is controlled by the banks.
Expanding our system, having the infrastructure to do what we need to do, changing to a zero-emission bus fleet, and having a AAA bond rating allows TriMet to borrow funds at the most advantageous rate.
And the most advantageous rate is not that great, and that's money interest rate that comes out of your taxes that does nothing for you. It's interest. Interest is extraction of wealth for nothing. And that's how the international banking cartel maintains this lock on the world. Because everything they do, they get back more forever. It's like these bonds are 20 years, so you got $1 billion worth of bonds at 5%. Figure that out. So they're getting paid back for doing nothing. It's the scam, folks, right in front of you.
The rating agencies also consider the strength and the diversification of our resources. They expect to see increases in all of those resources over time. So while our employer payroll taxes have increased, our federal formula funding has increased. Our passenger revenues have not increased. Other considerations The federal funding that we have received will be spent down approximately fiscal year 2025, and our current business payroll tax growth ends in 2026, January of 2026. Advance?
Yeah, and then they'll get it renewed by the Oregon legislature to keep it going. There's never any end to the taxation of the people. Never any end. And they're squeezing the life out of us. If you don't realize what's actually happening to you, you're a frog in water that's slowly going to be brought to a boil. Okay, that's what's actually happening to us right now. It all started in 9/11. It came to a peak with the scamdemic, and now they're implementing the New World Order.
Now, the challenges of a fair increase. So when you look at our employer payroll tax, these employers and self-employed individuals in our district, they pay that tax, which is TriMet's largest source of funding. From January of 2016 through December of 2025, those employers have been paying an annual increase of 0.1%.
So that's going up every single year. It started for 10 straight years, they're getting an increase in taxes. That taxes goes to the industrial complex, which goes to the banks. You see the scam here? Can you put it together in your minds? They're never going to stop taxing you, okay? They're going to continue to tax you into oblivion, and that's when the society will collapse. We're already on our way to collapse. You know, we're already on the road.
On top of their current rate. Over the scheduled 10 years of increases, we will have raised the payroll tax by 1%.
Yeah.
But those employers don't just pay the employer payroll tax. They also pay for employee passes. So they pay what we call our institutional accounts. So raising fares could also place a greater burden on those who are already paying an increase in the employer payroll tax. Even with the discounts they receive, they may choose to opt out of the program. Advance? House Bill 2017 funding. So employees throughout the district have been paid the employee payroll tax of 0.1%. This is a dedicated funding.
This was the tax grab. This is where the Oregon legislature and governor just said, we're going to steal your money. You don't get a vote on this one. Okay. Apparently nobody objected except me. I didn't hear, man, I guess Cascade Policy Group. But you know how it goes in Oregon and Washington. They've never seen a tax increase they didn't like.
Stream for specific projects. And you're all very familiar with this because you approved the plan. So what we are looking for in our House Bill 2017 funds is to utilize more of that funding to offset the impact of a fair increase to those most vulnerable. Our ridership is down.
That was like less than 1% of the tax grab, by the way. They rolled that out because it makes good PR. But the amount of money from the tax grab that's going to low-income fare is not even 1% of the tax grab. So make that clear because they try to trick you with that too.
Approximately 40%. Increased fares could discourage use. However, as we talked about, we're looking at using some of those STIF fundings to mitigate the cost and the impact of a fare increase to those most vulnerable.
Yeah, sure.
Advance? We also have some system considerations. So this will be our...
Well, that's unbelievable. Think about that. So they implemented a system. Think about this. They implemented a fare system that they can't just change easily. Now, how do you do that? I mean, think about it. Think about that. In other words, it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars to change that HOP system. Another criminal act as far as I'm concerned. So they implemented a system where they can't just change it. So why did they do that? I'll tell you why. Money. This is another aspect of government making sure that it stays in business.
Our first change in the HOP system, and the technology changes are going to need to be made on a number of different fronts. And then there's always those things, the unknowns. We've not done this before. We might encounter some things that we had not anticipated.
Will.
But the reality is we're going to have to go through it at some point. But there are considerations here that staff will be working on. While many community groups have asked TriMet to go fare-free, we do not believe that it is feasible nor in the best interest of TriMet and the system and our community to go to.
Don't say the community. It's not in your best interest. It's in the interest of the community. So don't lie about that. Just say you want to keep the fares, and that's a method to control the low-income people. The public transportation to police state pipeline is what the fares actually fund. Because remember, fare enforcement costs more than the amount of fares that they recover. That's documented truth.
A fareless system. Vance? So we're here before you today to ask you, when should TriMet increase fares? And what range should TriMet?
I mean, think of the hubris involved with this meeting right now. The incredible hubris of asking for a fare increase when your system barely operational. You don't have enough operators. You've cut your services back 20%. But here they are asking for a fare increase. I consider it insulting, and I would never use the system if I had a choice. I mean, the problem for a lot of people is they don't have a choice. And that's why I was always against the transit-oriented development idea that somehow you're going to live on transit and only use transit. It's a horrible idea for this exact reason. You become a prisoner of the government now, which is what they actually want to do. We know that to be a fact from the scamdemic and how they implemented. They forced us all in line. We all complied like good little sheeple. And they're going to do this in your face right now in the middle of this TriMet breakdown. And we're not going to do anything. You'll have a few people, complain. But they know that we're not going to do anything. They have found that out. When it comes to the West, especially the USA, they have us fighting between the red and the blue here. Because people actually think Trump is some kind of hero. It's hard to believe that anybody thinks that, but they do. It just shows you how off the rail so many Americans' minds are. Well, there's other people that think Biden is good, which is equally absurd.
Implement those fares. So, Director Simmons, I'll turn it back to you.
Right. And with that, I'm going to open the floor to the board to discuss the proposals before us.
All right. That's enough. That's the conclusion of of the TriMet part of the presentation, and I'll do some more tomorrow.